Hello, I am coming to you live from Fort Morgan today in the Gulf Shores of Alabama. First of all, it is a beautiful day here, as you can see behind me. The sun is setting. I'll give you a quick glimpse of that for those of you that are watching in the replay. Look at that sunset. Beautiful day today. Just gorgeous. And hey, Jamie, I'm in your neighborhood. So glad you stopped in. So today is, first of all, welcome to the Confidence Corner. That's where you are. This is happening every Tuesday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And today we are talking about how to connect with your audience. So the first thing, I'm going to say three of them, all three, so you have the tips right up front, and then I'll describe them a little bit more. The first one is eye contact. You need to be able to connect with your eyes. That is a great way to show that connection. Number two, a warm smile that makes you come across as warm, literally, and wonderfully friendly and approachable. The third one is to make sure that your message is relevant to your audience. That is one that we tend to forget about a lot. So let me go through. Hi, Andrea. So great to see you. Hey, Mary. Mary is with me here on the Gulf Shores of Alabama, Fort Morgan to be exact. And the first one is eye contact. Now, let's talk about, for those of you that are doing Instagram Lives or you're doing meetings on Zoom, you want to make sure that you are looking at the camera. This is one of the biggest challenges, and I will tell you, full disclosure, for me, it's still to this day the hardest thing, because when you're looking at the camera, you don't usually look at people that are there. So right now, I'm tempted because I want to look down at the comments, and I will, but I'm not going to live there. You always want to think about this as the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, you focus on doing the things that are most effective. 20% of the time, it's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. Welcome, by the way. All right, Mary, come on in. Mary, if you want to come in, you are welcome to join. So the eye contact piece, making sure that you are looking at the camera, because that's going to give the audience the best experience possible. Mary Snyder, welcome to the party. What do you have to say about connecting with your audience?
I think the number one thing you need to do to connect to your audience is know the problem you can solve for them.
Yes! And what is the problem that you solve, Mary?
The problem I solve for my audience is I help them craft the story of their heart or their brand. And then I
love
help
it.
Take that story to the stage.
I love it. And you are so good at it. What would you
Thank
say
you so much.
when you think about your typical client? What is the biggest thing that you know, people come to you for a reason. What is the biggest thing that you end up solving for them? What's the most typical thing that somebody comes to you with, or the biggest struggle?
The biggest struggle, oftentimes people don't know what their stories are. They just know they want to share something, but they're not really clear on what that is. Because oftentimes when we step on the stage, Karen, as you know, we tend to overshare. So simplicity and creating a message that connects.
Absolutely. And now that I'm so glad you're here, by the way, and by the way, for those of you that don't know this, Mary and I are actually not that far away from each other. And she surprised me by being on, which is super fun.
Yes.
So what do we need to do then, instead of just rambling and saying all the things that we want to say?
We need, well, first of all, when you step onto the stage, once you know what you're supposed to say, you're going to stand and start. And that means we don't need that means we don't stand up and go, hey, how are you? And then reintroduce ourselves. And don't do this, Karen. This is my pet peeve. Is then we start explaining why we're not ready. We're like, well, I mean, I was really busy this week. The cat threw up on my homework. The traffic was bad. And our audience feels like, well, maybe I should just go home because you're not in a good way.
Yes.
Don't apologize. Stand and start right in the middle of your story.
That's the best. And what do you do if you're not somebody, so people that are listening, maybe they're not speaking on a stage typically,
Sure.
They're in a meeting, whether it's on Zoom or in real life, what do you typically recommend that they do?
Well, if you're on Zoom, say you're in a Zoom and you're leading a Zoom meeting, know and understand the purpose of your meeting. I've got help. know and understand what are you going to achieve in this meeting. What are you here for? There's a helicopter flying over me.
Yes, there is. You gotta love these distractions.
It's live, y'all. But in a Zoom, so if you are in a Zoom meeting and you are leading, then know and understand what your purpose for this meeting is. Nothing is more frustrating than attendees, than a meeting leader stepping up and not having an agenda.
Oh, yes. Yes. So what if we're not the leader of the meeting? How do we get somebody back on task that's supposed to be leading the troops?
How do we repeat that, Karen? Because there's a lot happening.
How do we get someone back on track? If we're not the ones leading the meeting, how do we get the person who's supposed to be back?
Well, my favorite thing to do is say, excuse me, and I interrupt or I hold my hand up. And I am fine with saying, excuse me, can I ask a clarifying question about our meeting? And then I'll ask a question about what I believe the meeting is about. And that will oftentimes turn the ship.
That's brilliant. Did everybody hear that? Will you repeat that one more time, sure. Mary?
What I do is I ask this. I hold my hand up and I say, may I ask a clarifying question about our meeting today? And then I will ask, are we going to, and I'll fill in the blank on that. Are we here to, in other words, what the heck are we here for?
Yes. And that's a good point. Thinking about the relationship you have with your audience. If you're in a meeting and you meet with these people every week, or even if you don't meet with them regularly, but you know them well, don't be afraid to speak up, because this is the thing that I find is such a problem. And this reminds me of one of the women that you and I both know recently who took an Uber here together where we are in this retreat. And the Uber driver's music was so loud, but neither of them said anything until one did say something and said it very nicely to the Uber driver. Hey, could you turn the music down? And he said, oh my gosh, of course. And then the other woman turned to the person that spoke up and said, oh, I'm so glad you said something. And isn't that what happens a lot of times? So being the voice of reason in the meeting to say something so that people almost wake up to realize, oh, that's right, I didn't have an agenda, or I didn't say what the purpose was.
Right.
What other tips have you got for us, Mary?
So other tips for getting the meeting back on track. Again, clarifying question. And then if you have what I like to call the meeting feeler, and that's the person that's going to spill all their feelings in the meeting, I like to, again, just say, hey, can I ask, and I don't do a clarifying question, can I ask something? And then that person usually will pause and say, is there an opportunity for us to meet afterward to talk about that? If it's something I need to step in on. Now, if it's not mine to step in on, I will text somebody else in that meeting and have them lead out on that. But having people that overwhelm the leader is something that we all need to watch out for. And if we all do our part, we can really help these meetings be more efficient.
Yes.
And isn't that, and clear communications.
Yes. Yes. What do you think is, so the three things that I was focusing on were eye contact, which we talked about a little bit. I talked about a little bit already. Okay. The second one is a warm smile. And then the third is to make your message relevant to your audience.
Yes.
What tips would you offer related to any of those, or why those matter?
Okay. First of all, I love those. I teach the number one thing you do when you come out on a stage or onto a Zoom meeting, when that camera goes on or when you begin to walk on that stage, you put what I call a smile that lights up your eyes. Not this smile. You want to do like full on, just like the big smile. Like, I am so excited to be here. And if you're the leader or you're attending the meeting, you click that camera on and you are so excited to be there. Mute your mic because you know how they get about that. And eye contact. Now, here's a struggle with Zoom. Because right now I'm trying to look at Karen, and I remember I'm not supposed to look at Karen. I'm supposed to be looking up at the camera.
Yes.
Is know where your camera is. And here's a trick. Put you a little sticker up there by the camera. So when it's your turn to talk into the camera.
Beautiful.
And pay attention to the camera. And then, Karen, I talked so much I forgot what the third one was.
Well, first of all, The sticker thing. Are you talking about a Post-it note? What are you talking about?
Hey, listen, I'm kind of bougie. I like to use like a little arrow sticker, just a
Oh,
little tiny one, and I point it right where. Now, I'm gonna also give you a trick. If you use an external camera, you have to figure that out every time you get on Zoom because you're going to move it around. So
yes.
I learned that it was better to use my regular camera for that purpose because it stayed
Yeah,
pretty
I'm the same.
pretty
Yeah,
stationary.
that's great. Okay, our third one, and then we'll wrap up with this third one, is making your message relevant to the audience. How do you do that?
Well, number one, know your audience. Like if you're in a meeting, understand who's in the meeting and why what you do matters to them, and then discuss those points. Case in point, I'm in a meeting. I've got my client who is the head of marketing for this company, and I've got several other high level people. They are not remotely interested in me talking about the nuts and bolts of how we're going to tell their story today. What
Yeah,
they want to know is how is this going to affect their bottom line? So we're going
yes,
to talk about that. So
yes,
know your audience and know how you're serving well. And in a meeting, if you're intentional, what are you bringing to the table that is valuable to this? And do not keep it hidden. As
yes,
women, Karen, oftentimes I used to not speak up because I didn't think, but think about what you're bringing to the table and then share it
yes,
in the right time.
yes. Absolutely. Well, and that reminds me of the curse of knowledge, because the more knowledge and the more expertise we have on a topic, the harder it is to see things through the lens of our listener.
That's
And
right.
this is also why your point is so critical, to be intentional about knowing who your audience is, figuring out, like you said, what matters to them, and then bring that rather than what you think is important.
So
And I feel like this is where I see people making mistakes all the time. And I also think it's because we're nervous that we sometimes I think it's a lack of awareness. I'd love to know what you think. But also I think it's just simply that we're so fixated on what I want to say, and I've got to prove myself, and all of these things that get in our way of actually serving our audience. What do you think about that?
I think you nailed it. Oftentimes we're trying to prove ourselves and we are so focused on us that we can't focus on the needs of that meeting, that client, that situation, that audience. One of the things I love to do before I do a meeting is I jot down 4 or 5 things that I want to have addressed. And then I pay attention to what's happening. That may be something I need to take off on. That may be something I need to discuss. That may be something I need to discuss later.
Okay, got it. Well, what I love the fact that I want to call it that you said is pay attention.
Yeah.
And think about pay attention to the audience, pay attention to the people sitting in that room, whether it's at a conference room table, a PTA meeting, on a stage, wherever it is. Don't
Right.
think about, I love what Donald Miller says about focus more on being interested in others than being interesting. And
Yes.
if we can focus on the interests of our audience, we are going to be much more influential and come across in a much more powerful way.
Absolutely.
So, Mary, thanks for joining me today. This was
Thank
so
you.
fun.
I loved it.
Any last comments you want to say?
You know what? Just what Karen said. Focus on being interested. Focus on them and not on you. Because here's the deal. I'm going to let y'all in on a little bitty secret. Lean in. It's not all about you.
What? That can't be possible.
Thanks for having
Hey, Mary,
me here.
let's do a quick selfie while we're here.
Oh.
Smile for the camera. Awesome. All right. Thanks, Mary. What a fun, spontaneous guest. Hey, by the way, for anybody listening, you too can be a spontaneous guest or a potential guest that's organized in advance. Either one, I welcome. And this is the Confidence Corner. Karen Laus signing off from Fort Morgan in the Gulf Shores of Alabama. Have a wonderful night or morning or whatever your time zone is. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.